All right, welcome back to another tutorial in Maya. Today, we're going to take a look at texturing, and in particular, we're going to texture the moon. And right now, I have a moon going, simple sphere, no big deal, and this is what it looks like in the render. And I really wanted to get a good texture for the moon and make it look, as real as I possibly could. Just because, if you're going to do a flyby or something like that, you might want to have it kind of stand out a little bit. And this was a really good method I found, or at least I know of, and I thought you might be interested in this as well, of making a really great looking moon texture. So that's what the render looks like. Now, this idea really came because I was working on a tutorial, and this is coming up, to show you some ways to work with like some lava field and some particle effects for lava. But really this moon, it wasn't looking too good back here, so I thought, well, maybe I can bump it up into a hyper-real state and make it look, a little bit more like what the moon looks like. And I have a little glow added and stuff here. So anyway, stay tuned for this two-part series coming up, or we'll get into that later. But yeah, essentially that's it. I found this moon texture over at a site called celestiamotherlode.net. And I think I just went down here and looked for this surface map of the moon, and I grabbed this JPEG right here. It's a pretty big file, and I'm not that familiar with what this 3D space simulator is, but there's a really nice texture map over here. And so go download that, and you can kind of work along with the same thing we're doing here. Okay, so celestiamotherlode.net, thank you for the textures. All right, now let's go to another thing called CrazyBump. I did this texture right here with a little app called CrazyBump, and everything else is woefully inadequate. And they got a sense of humor, and that's cool. So anyway, go over and maybe download the Windows 1.2 trial. I think this blows up after 30 days. And there's a new Mac Beta Test 2 over there. So if you're on a Mac, you are in luck. You're going to get hooked up with CrazyBump, which I love this little app because of its simplicity, the interface, and everything about it. So it's just really cool. So check out CrazyBump, okay? Because we're going to be working with this in this tutorial. And, that's kind of what it is. Well, let's look at CrazyBump now and look at this texture that we have going on in Maya. I'm going to hide this for a second. And I started in Photoshop with that texture that I downloaded from Celestia. And essentially, this is the starting point for it. And I had to sort of, make it, it was a little too bright here because I want to add lights and stuff. And, so I kind of want to bring this down to the mid-level gray area somewhere. So that's kind of what I did with it. But also, with this data in this map, it has a couple of different things going on here, you'll see. The first you should note is that it gets a little bit weird up here at the top and at the bottom. It looks kind of like there's a lot of parallax, going on there. And that's okay. It really should be like this because these maps are sort of made up to fit around a sphere. And that's what we're going to be attaching this to in Maya. So we're all good to go. But you'll also notice that in this data set, or whatever they created this texture with, that there's a straight line going straight through here, and then another delineation kind of going down here and kind of following it across. And I don't know how well you can see this on YouTube, but it is there, and I think I just used the clone tool to kind of, moire this stuff together. So just be aware of that this will show up on your model or on your sphere if you don't take care of it. So just something to look for as you're going about this process. So anyway, that's what I did. And then I created a map here where I corrected for that and brought the levels down a little bit into the mid-gray. And this seemed to give me a much kind of better result, so to speak. There's still a little bit of, delineation I can see here, but that's no big deal. Okay, so I saved this file out as a TIFF. I just went to Save As, and I saved it as a TIFF, and I actually renamed it for this over here, but we'll get to that in a minute. So anyway, that's what you should do with your, texture right here. So cool. I'll just hide Photoshop for a sec, and let's go in and launch CrazyBump. All right, and there it is. This is the Macintosh Beta Test 2, and the forum isn't up and working right now, so I don't know what's going on there. But anyway, it's really super simple. What we're going to do is we're just going to open a file. So I'm going to go to Open, and then I'm going to go to Open Photograph from File. And in this case, I'm going to navigate to my desktop, which I had a moon folder going here. And let's see if I can find that. There it is, moon map. And under my moon map, I've already output some of this stuff, so don't mind that. But I'm going to load this dynamic color map. But this is the one that I actually changed in Photoshop that I just showed you. So I'm going to go ahead and open that one. And you'll notice it'll think for a minute here. And we are instructed to wait. All right. And we're going to select, kind of what would be best representative of, the shape, because we're working with a normal map, kind of. So I think I'll go with this one because this kind of shows some lower depression areas and some higher values. And this is kind of opposite, but, either or, you can always change this later. So I think I'll select this one right now. We'll just look at that. Right away, you'll notice that it pops up and it applies a normal map to, a 3D object. In this case, it's a ball. You can switch that ball up to a column if that suits you better, or you can switch it up to a box if that suits you better. I think I'll just work with the ball for the moment. And you'll notice it's tiled in here. This is just sort of something part of the program. It just kind of tiles it out for a ball. So it's not really... we don't really know what's going on there yet. So I'm going to click here once in the interface, and that'll stop it from evolving there, or revolving. And you can deselect the colored lights, and that gives you just an option there. And then I might want to look at my diffuse color, and that'll add that moon texture that as a diffuse file right down here. There it is. And also it automatically kind of starts calculating what a specularity, an occlusion, or the displacement should look like. So in this case, we're just interested in this one for the moment. We'll look at this normal map. And, it's doing what it's doing. I might switch this up to a box and just sort of take a look at it in the viewer here. And this is pretty cool. In the viewer, you can kind of, just click and drag. This is a left mouse button. If you were to say middle mouse button, click and drag, you can move that lighting around a little bit. Okay, so that's cool. So we can kind of see these surfaces a little bit in a different kind of light. So anyway, there you go. If you double click on the window, it's going to go back into its revolving state. So kind of cool. Very simple, but very effective, and a good way to look at objects. Also, you can switch this up and look at your, ambient occlusion applied to there. You may or may not need an ambient occlusion map. That'll give you a better idea. And you can add your colored lights back if you want to add the colored lights, and you can add this diffuse color in. So, now I can kind of tell what's going on with that surface a little better. So I'll just leave this like that at the moment. And, the intensity is sort of set up at 50 to begin with on a normal map. And I'm going to bring that to the side here. And let's take a look at this normal intensity. I can bring it down to a lower intensity. I can bring it into the negative area. And in this case, I know that, these areas should be a little bit higher. So I might want to do a little bit in the negative area of that map. I don't know. I mean, it's all up to you, whatever, wherever you need your depressions going on. Because this is kind of like a bump map and a displacement map. It gives kind of a fake 3D value, your normal map does, to lots of different things. And for many things, you're going to need a normal map. So anyway, that's cool. You can apply some sharpening, and in some cases, you may or may not see much of a difference, just depending on what you're doing. I'll go ahead and just crank that all the way up, and there we go. Now we have a little bit more definition in our bump. So I think I'll just leave it down there for now. Noise removal, you're going to have to play around with these to figure out what they do. These just sort of vary the fine details, the medium details, and the large details. And for the most part, I find that, leaving them on default values actually works pretty good. Sometimes I may choose just to lower them a little bit because I can play around with these values in Maya once we get going in there. So let's just say that looks pretty good for our normal map. All you have to do now really is just sort of let's actually select our diffuse and look at this. Now we're looking at our color map or our diffuse, and you can remove the shading completely by just upping it like that. And technically we might not really want to do that for our diffuse map, but you do have some variability with removing shading if you're going to do something special with it. But for right now, let's just leave shading off. And, you can do a little color correction if something needs color correction. But this isn't really the best place to do your color correcting. You should do that on your diffuse map before you even bring it in. So anyway, I'm just going to leave it like that. And now all you have to do really is just hit save, and it's going to save this diffuse channel or this diffuse file to wherever we send it. In this case, I've already made my what do you call it? I've already made my maps, but this will add a color.png. If you select normals, I'm going to hit cancel on there. If you select your normals and save this normal map out, it's going to add the NRM extension. And all of this stuff goes out as a PNG at the original file size that you load. So that's cool too. Displacement map is the same thing. If you click on displacement and you come down to save your displacement to file, you're basically going to have an extension that says DISP right here. Okay, so it's going to save it out as a PNG. And same thing for occlusion and specularity. So that's really cool. All right, so play around with working with a texture inside of CrazyBump, and you'll be hooked. I love CrazyBump. It's a great little app, and it's open for Mac now, so that's cool. All right, well, I'm going to do this. Let's hook up a system that I created in CrazyBump. I'm going to go back into Maya here for a second, and I think what I'll do is I'll just take that. And I'm going to hide that display. We'll just hide that selection. And I think I might bring my grid back on. Bring my grid back on there. And I'm going to create another sphere because I want to show you something here. Just create a simple sphere. And there it is. And I may want to just center that guy out. And I'm just going to leave this single spotlight where it is. And we'll just sort of kind of test from there. All right. So I'm going to turn off my grid now, turn off that grid, and there we go. All right, and in the hypershade is where we want to start. I'm going to just sort of clear my graph for a second, and I want to grab I'll grab a surface blend to begin with. And even though the moon isn't reflective, it does kind of have some level of reflectance because it's reflecting, light, and essentially it's a reflective surface, but we don't want that much reflectivity in. So I'm going to just go ahead and grab a 2D texture file and then another one. So, I'll have two different 2D texture files here. So I'll grab this first one and let's attach one of those files to it. I'm going to attach the normal map first. So if I go into here, I can look and see what I have as my beginning starting point. I'm going to go ahead and choose that normal map first and just attach it to there. And then I'm going to grab this one and we'll just work with a simple color map or our diffuse. And in my case, that corrected one is this one right here. It's the more dynamic one. I'm going to go ahead and hit open there. So now in the hypershade, you're going to have your basic color map and your normal map or your bump map. So I'm just going to select file 4, drag and drop it on top of the blend, and I'm going to attach that to the color channel. And I'm going to select this guy, the file 3 normal map, drag and drop it on top of there, and I'm going to hook it up to the bump map. All right. So now let's hook this blend 2 up. I think I can just sort of drag and drop that on top of my sphere, and there we go. So let's maybe bring this down a little bit, because we're going to do a little bit of work here in the hypershade. And there we go. So let's look at our color first, and maybe do a quick render. I'm going to bring my render view over here. I'm rendering out at 1280 by 720. And let's just see what that looks like to begin with. Okay, so it looks really, it's not what we want, all right? So that is cool. We're going to deal with it. I'm going to come over here and first look at this bump map value. We really want to reduce the bumpiness on that to begin with. So I'm going to click my file, and I'm going to come over, and you can leave it at quadratic. Generally, to have a little bit of blurring is okay. But what we really want to do is we're looking for this bump node that's connected right there. I want to click on there and look at this bump depth, and maybe just sort of start low. I'm going to do a 0.125 as a bump value. And you can see in the viewport over here it changed up pretty nicely. So let's get a little closer in on that, and we'll do another render and see what that looks like. And this method is pretty good with a normal map, because I mean, I'm getting, a pretty good looking surface with all the right kind of looking stuff at 2 seconds, and that's at a 1280 by 720. So that's pretty cool. It's still a little bumpy, so I might want to bring that down a little bit. So I might look at, say, 0.075 or something like that. Watch that update a little bit, and we'll do another quick render, and we're good to go. And there it is. Okay, and I can keep working on that a little bit. Probably this bump, I could try, like, say, 0.050. All right, let's see what that looks like. All right, and there you go. Okay, now remember that this is attached to a blend, and you can see this bright spot right here. If you want to switch that up, you may want to just go ahead and select your object and look at this color that's assigned there. And really, it's in this section right here that we want to bring the reflectivity down quite a bit. We could bring this specular color down a bit. We could bring our roll-off down quite a bit. And eccentricity down a little. I don't know. You be the judge, but let's look at the difference between, say, this render and one more render. All right, so now that kind of disappeared, all of that weirdness. So there's our new render, and there's our old render. And you can see where that blend, because it's reflective, and we had some specular properties going on there that we don't really need that. So, okay, there you go. All right, well, I hope this has been a fun tutorial. It's just a quick way to get a texture going on the moon. Oh, wait. Oh, I forgot something. I want to show you what's happening here with this sphere. If you come up into your window and come down into your UV texture editor, and let's bring that over here, you'll notice that it has what's called a sawtooth going on here. This is just the original, this is the original file here. Let's maybe do a couple of things here really quick. Let's look at this sphere right here and look at its axes, the subdivisions. I'm going to bring that up and watch what happens in that UV texture editor. Okay, this just gives it a little bit more clarity in that UV, but it also, gives a little bit more divisions up here at what's called the sawtooth. And right here you'll see where it says create UVs sawtooth at pole. And that's what it did, is there's your sawtooth at the pole. Now, if I bring this down here and I go pinched at pole, it's going to sort of slightly alter the UV to pinch everything up here toward the top. And let's look at a quick render of both when we actually look at the top or the bottom of this sphere. I'm going to come up here to the top, and I may have to readjust my lights. Let's see here. I think what I'll do is just turn this light off for a moment. All right. And I think I'll leave it on high quality, but I'm going to turn that light off. Okay, so now I can kind of see what's going on the poles. And in this case, let's take a look at kind of what it looks like at the poles. I'm going to bring this up here a little more and bring that over here. And let's do, you can see where we've got it pinched right there now. So I'm going to do a render. And here's my render window. Come in and do a quick render. And we're not seeing anything because I turned off all my lights. Okay, well, anyway, you do the rendering on this and see if you can notice a difference when you switch that up between you're pinched at the pole or come over here and do sawtooth at the pole. All right, and that's kind of an interesting thing, which shows you that, you know, technically the sawtooth at the pole is your better choice here. So anyway, just something I thought I'd point out. Okay, so that's it. And you guys have a great weekend, and thanks for watching. And as always, be a really good person. And read a book, because that'll help your brain. And check out lesterbanks.com every day. All right, thanks for watching.